Hello, Sunday morning coffee talk fans. We are back. It is 2022, and we are so happy to be back live with you. We miss you, fans. How was your holiday season? We are hoping everyone is safe. We are hoping everyone is live and in charge and ready to make a difference this year. I am your host, Savannah, the owner of Sunday Morning Coffee Company, and it is my honor and indeed pleasure to welcome you to this platform where we provide knowledge, wisdom, and understanding on intriguing and exciting topics all over coffee. Sunday Morning Coffee, for those of you who are not familiar, our coffee beans are regal. We get our beans from all over the globe, and then when you place your order, we roast them that day. Why? Because that gives you the freshest experience. Our coffee is made from sustainable farmers all over the world. We care about our environment and we pass that along to our customers. So, for you who have already understood the power of Sunday morning, we thank you for maintaining your patronage. And we welcome you, new customers, to try all of our blends. We have many different varieties, and we are available on our website at sundaymorningroast.com and also on Amazon. If you have no idea which blend you would like to try, get our sampler box. Inside that box, you can customize up to 4 different blends. Why? Because we want to make sure that you have options, Sunday morning fans. We here at Sunday Morning Coffee love options. Today, we are extra hyped because this show kicks off our dope guest speaker series. This year, we will have authors, women CEOs, health professionals discussing post COVID health and fitness. We will have entrepreneurs explaining the Black Wall Street and 4 outstanding men sharing on Grown Men Talk. Sunday morning, it's already been a great year. And our guests today are kicking off our guest series. We have 2 authors of a new book soon to be published called The Evolution of Technology, The Promise and the Peril. It is a book about the impact of technology on 2 of our country's largest generations, the baby boomers and the millennials. In an ironic meeting and generations apart, these 2 authors met and discovered their differences of how they perceive technology. And they decided to collaborate and actually make an opportunity for a great read for the world to discover that there is a good amount of information that creates a platform for a dialogue that could really help to bridge the gap between the generations. So, in co-writing the book, they actually came together and they have been surprised to see and discover that they have more similarities than differences. We are really, really happy and we are so fortunate that today such great partnerships can come together out of the most inconspicuous circumstances. So, our first author, Tony Baldwin, who is a baby boomer, he has been an executive for several multi-million-dollar companies throughout the DMV area for most of his adult career life. He has a passion to help small businesses, especially startups, in connecting with powerhouse decision makers and helping them get contracts and funding to operate. Our second co author is Kareem Mitchell, a millennial. This young man is a young entrepreneur and the owner of Dinero Records Entertainment, an engineering and music beat company that helps young musicians and artists produce music. Sunday morning fans, please give a warm welcome to our two authors launching our guest speaker series today, Tony Baldwin and Kareem Mitchell.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
We are actually honored to be the inaugural guest in the Sunday morning guest speaker series. And I'm not certain if we're up to the standards of that august introduction, but we'll give it a good try. But thank you immensely for having us on, and we look forward to exploring some of the impacts that technology has on our way of life, and talking a little bit about where we see the future as it evolves, technology evolves.
Excellent. Well, this brings about my first question. And I'll start with you, Kareem. How is it that this even came about with you two, a millennial, and you, Tony, a baby boomer, coming together to write a book and then about technology that seems to be worlds apart for both of you, but you're collaborating? How did this happen?
Well, there was a workshop that I was involved in, and it was about communicating effectively with millennials. And it was a workshop to other generations. So it was mainly an informational workshop about how generations differ in their communication and how technology can be a tool for that. So Mr. Baldwin was part of the workshop audience, and I was one of the facilitators. And through the workshop, some of the information that I had presented set off a light bulb to Mr. Baldwin, and he had an idea that he had been trying to do for some time. And he reached out to me after the workshop and said, hey, I have this idea of this book I've been wanting to do, but I didn't think that I would need the generational gap. But seeing the workshop brought that idea to him, and then he presented it to me, and I figured it would be a good idea. In my spare time, obviously, like you mentioned, I do music production and records, and so I do a lot of technological work. I do a lot of things with the new technology, modern technology, DIY stuff. So I have my side of it. And obviously, with Mr. Baldwin being a baby boomer, he's also seen the evolution of technology as it's come. And so he's been a part of things that was past technology, has been a part of situations where he has used past technology, and seeing the evolution of it today. I think that's what kind of gave us that connection that we set out for.
Well, Tony, what was it inside that workshop that sparked this idea for you to literally ignite or reignite the vision for the book?
It's a very good question. Actually, I think the prism in which we, at least speaking for myself, view technology, I view it perhaps more through a sociological lens. Okay. And attending the workshop, it dawned on me immediately that generationally speaking, as with anything that you grew up with and it was the norm, okay, and we are, at the end of the day, products of our experiences. Mm-hmm. And witnessing Kareem's presentation, it occurred to me that technology was part of his existence. So his perspective on it was totally different from my own. Mm. And where I tended to see a lot of peril with technology, he sees it from the prism of a great deal of opportunity and very much promise.
So let's go into that a little more of detail because that is an interesting subtitle, The Peril and the Promise. And just even in the context that you reference technology being a peril as a baby boomer and Kareem seeing it as a promise as a millennial, can you give us an example about the peril that you're referencing?
Sure. Most immediately, the the reality that you don't have any privacy is the greatest peril, and that is perhaps the greatest prism from which I view technology, and also the impacts it has on our society and, frankly, our way of life. And again, if I extrapolate what can be done, unintended consequences with technology, how it impacts our economy. In the wrong hands, all this great technology could conceivably eliminate a lot of the things that we've come to expect to get from humans. And in a capitalistic world where profit is a huge driver and shareholder value means everything to a CEO, what if some great technology got into the hand of a person who did not necessarily see his brother as his brother and was driven strictly by that profit motivation, and they happen to own, let's say, a multinational conglomerate? The driver in many cases could be, I don't necessarily need to have as many humans to produce products or a process by which to bring things to market, and I in turn can increase my profit motive. And the consequence, the unintended consequence there is the impact to his workers, if you will.
That's fascinating because you make a lot of legitimate, valid points, Kareem. The concern about privacy, the concern about replacing human capital, those are very real detriments to a CEO, a business owner, a chairman. How do you internalize that, the very technology that you may see differently?
Yes, well, I will say that the perils of the technology are that it could be a human replacement. It could be detriment to CEOs and the businesses. But on the flip side of that, it gives opportunity for everybody to become a CEO. It gives opportunities for everybody to become that driving force that needs that human replacement. So robots are robots and AI is AI, but people have to have a need for that. People also have to program them and have to operate them. So those are the promises of the technological advancements that millennials, and I'll speak for myself, but I do know millennials believe in that because we grew up in that. And so as we continue to see the evolution of technology, we don't look at it solely for what it's taken away. We look at it mainly about, okay, it's taken away this aspect, but it's opened up the door for this aspect.
And that is the unique perspective that I got from Kareem. So there's a balance here. Certainly the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. I think the challenges we are learning more and more every day is how do we balance that, the potential unintended consequences, because we certainly appreciate all of the advancements and innovations. As I've said, innovations historically have bettered our way of life. One of the things that we talked about when we started developing some themes and topics is, looking at, from my perspective, looking at how the innovation of the automobile transformed society, transformed our way of life. And so balance is a critical component. We certainly want to embrace technology, but again, we also need to have some perspective on the impacts that are unintended and then how do we mitigate the negative impact, and then how do we adversely, how do we maximize the positive things that we get from the innovations that are evolving every day.
So, Tony, because baby boomers were the single largest generation until the millennials, they were it. The baby boomers. There was no other generation that was larger, and a good number of your generation is very much still in the workforce, and not only in the workforce, but you're the decision makers. A good number of baby boomers still hold the helm of being the chairman, the CEO, the president. So, can you speak to how in the workplace today, there's never been more generations in the same workplace? Now we literally have 5 generations in one workplace. So, can you speak to how there are the challenges that being a baby boomer, probably a decision maker, in a workplace that's filled with millennials, that's your workforce?
Which is why the workshop was so enlightening to me, because you got feedback directly from a generation that has a totally different view on many different things. And I think we, as baby boomers or other generations, in many cases, we have to deprogram ourselves, because the things that we were and are motivated by aren't necessarily as important to millennials, especially. So it makes decisions as it regard recruiting. It makes decisions as it regards hiring. It makes decisions about how the workplace is structured. Critically important, because you want to maximize your human capital, and you want to maximize the brain power that all of your team members bring to bear. And for lack of being cliche, you really want to meet them where they are, which is critically important. And for me, I gain a great deal of I get a great deal of learning from generations that are much younger than me. I think we bring a lot of isms to our point of view, and listening and getting some sense of how, in the case of Kareem, millennials view things is a benefit. It's enlightening, but you have to be willing to accept it, and you really have to be open to the point of view that said there are multiple ways to approach things.
Kareem, so can you speak to the challenges that your generation face in the workplace? I mean, certainly you're the largest generation now in the country, and you are in the age range where the majority of you are in the workforce. So can you share with us some of these challenges of the other generations, specifically the baby boomers, that have these perspectives about technology when that's the way you all were raised, where everything was technology?
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest challenges about technology with any generation is adaptation. Just being able to adapt to what the new technology is. And I'll give you an example. Most people in their elderly age, and I'm not sure the actual term of the generation, but the elderly, not 50, 60, I'm talking about maybe 70, 80. Those though that generation is still operating on either the flip phones or the very basic cell phone technology.
Okay, so that generation, they're called the traditionalists.
Okay, so the traditionalists. So they're still operating, and to this day, I just seen a lady in the grocery store 2 days ago. She probably was about 80 something maybe, and she still had the red flip phone, the old Nokia flip phone. And the reason for that is not that they can't get with what the new technology is, it's because they haven't adapted to it. So the touch screens, the face recognition, the text messages, even sending a picture, some of those things are taboo to traditionalists. And it's not like they probably wouldn't benefit from those features. It's just that they're not used to it. They haven't been able to take the time to learn it, or somebody hasn't been able to take the time to teach them, or they're just not willing to adapt to it. So that's one of the major problems with technology in general, and it does definitely go spill over to the workforce. So you do have those older generations who may think that the younger generations are, let's just say, moving too fast, for example, or taking shortcuts, for example, when at the end of the day it could just be a more innovative way to do the same job, but it was just different. And so it's not that it's one way is right, one way is wrong. It's just simply adapting. If generations adapt, even us as the millennials, we have to adapt to the baby boomers' way, because, like you said, you all are still in the charging command position in the workforce. So there are things that, obviously, if a millennial was in the charging command, then things would be a little bit different in certain situations. But because we come into a baby boomers workforce, we do have to adapt to the baby boomers workforce ways. And so there are times that millennials use our tactics and our technology and our way to alter that. And it's simply about adapting. Most baby boomers, they will see how a millennial operates in the workforce, and then they'll get a glimpse of why they do it based on efficiency, productivity, whatever the case may be, and they will accept it. They will adapt to it. Traditionalists are the ones who typically give a little more pullback to that. But once again, it's because of the adaptation.
So would you say that you've had more success in trying to work with a baby boomer or a traditionalist because of your approach, or is it that you haven't experienced success trying to do?
It's definitely the approach. The approach is everything. So I could persuade a traditionalist. I could persuade a baby boomer. If it works, it works. You know, black is going to always be black, white is going to always be white. So if it works, it works. Now, I understand that certain ways how it used to be done is not how it's being shown. But the approach is everything. Hey, this is what I think we could do. This is a new way. Let's try this way instead of anything forceful, even if it's from a baby boomer to a millennial. With the approach in the wrong light, with it being forced, that's going to cause rebellion. So the approach is everything. If you tell me, hey, I know you guys are used to doing this, but if you take your time and do it a little more slow and churn it a little bit better, it'll come out better. If the results speak for itself, then that's the adaptation that millennials will have to take. And it's the same goes for a millennial to a baby boomer or a traditionalist. Hey, I know you're used to studying this 4 or 5 hours at a time, but if you go on YouTube and look at this 10-minute video, you'll get the same results.
So in writing the book, what would you say you have discovered which is most surprising in working with Tony as a millennial to a baby boomer?
Well, so far, I would say most surprising would just be the similarities in what we do feel are perils. I do think that there are a lot of perils with technology as well. I am not just going to say that all technology is good. It does not all benefit us. The reason for technology was to make human life and interaction better, easier, and more efficient. However, it has made human interaction in life a little bit more handicapped, a little more lazy, and a little less interactive. So there are perils to the technological advances that we all have seen. Even my generation with millennials, we've seen advances in technology just in my generation. So we didn't see the birth of it completely, but we've seen advances. And there are some things that we have had in the past that maybe are advanced or are no longer, that some of those things we probably could still be good with. And the advancement of technology, whether they took it away or just made it a different way or whatever, it definitely does show that there can be perils from the advancement of technology. However, millennials are just more receptive to it, and we can adapt to it, and we can find the promises in the peril.
Now, some of the topics, because I want to have the conversation be about strictly the technology side of it. The things that we explore in the topics that we address in the book really have a lot more of a focus on our human interaction that is a result of technology. So we look at how we gather news, where we get our news from. We look at, to Kareem's point, the human communication, how we interact, how do we communicate. We look at entertainment. So we look at all types of topics that aren't necessarily product or are not byproducts of technology, but are in fact byproducts of what technology allows us to do. And then what are the impacts on the society? How does it impact government? How does it impact commerce? How has technology completely turned retail on its head? So we look at those types of things. So we look at it through a human prism. And at the end of the day, what we hope to do is not put a lot of challenges, but also bring forth, from our perspectives, what are the solutions? What are the ways that, as I said earlier, that we mitigate the downside and accentuate the positives, the potentials, and all of the opportunities that technology brings to bear. So it's not so much focus on the technology, because, when I embarked upon this and put all those ideas in a drawer in my desk, and they've sat there for years until I had the epiphany with Kareem, my perspective was really about how technology impacted the human interaction. So that was the greatest driver for me more than anything else. Of course, as we've started to collaborate, now I'm looking at all different spheres of technology that we don't even think about because it's just there. It's the way that we exist. So
This is an outstanding point, because what do you want the readers to really focus in on the human kindness of our existence in spite of the technology that is in present day form. So no matter if it's 1920, 2020, or 4020, it's still the human component that is the priority through all the technological advances that could, if we allow it, keep us separated. And that would be a peril. But the promise is that it's not designed to separate us. It really isn't. And Tony, I would have to say that for a baby boomer, it sounds like you're pretty open and you're pretty flexible. Yeah, it really does. And so what can you do to help some of your fellow baby boomers?
And quite frankly, they may be a great deal more accepting than I am, because I'm no technological whiz as Kareem is.
But I have to say, this is not just even about technology.
Right.
This is just about being open-minded and flexible to the differences.
It goes with, as I said earlier, I bring a sociological prism to things.
Correct.
And we're always looking for the why and the how of human interaction, and that's by far the top driver for me. And I always have just an abundance of curiosity, and I think with that curiosity, I'm always trying to draw the line between cause and effect. So it's and it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt that I've been influenced in large part by my younger daughters, and I find young people to be amazingly capable. Our challenge is to, how do we help them harness that, and how do we help them use it in a constructive and positive way. But I learn more, as I often say, I learn more from young people than I do my generation, because typically my generation may be a little less receptive to
And so
change.
what can be done to help your generation to open up, being that the millennials are certainly not shrinking,
Right.
and baby boomers are staying in the workplace longer. So what can be
Wow.
what do you think that everyone can do to help bridge this gap?
That's a very, very interesting question. I as simply as I can think of it, I would say curiosity and listening and being open to, as I like to think I am, just like, not to bring up something that perhaps is controversial, just different ethnicities. I'm always curious about different ethnicity, because I think there's great value in diversity. And if
That's that adaptation.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
that's it. Yeah.
and it perhaps it's a byproduct of where I went to school, and I went to college with, frankly, an international type university. So I think our differences are what makes us fantastic. And unfortunately, we exist today in a society where that we tend to exist in silos, which is disheartening. But to answer your question directly, I've always been very curious about things that are different from me, and wanting to understand, what makes them, the values that make them who they are, and the cultural backdrops that create them who they are as a person.
And Kareem, it's no question that your generation has proven to be the most receptive of almost everything and anything. You tend not to question why. It's interesting because when you said you tend to ask why and how, the millennials, that's not typically what you're seeking is why. It's been my experience that your generation is just so open to differences, to diversity of everything, not just race, but you're open and you're just accepting of change and differences. And because you have such an open mind of how you're go about anything, what is it that you can do or can offer to the millennials that may be watching, or parents of millennials, to help the millennials to help the other generations adapt, using your word, to your style, your flair, the way that you go about things, and maybe not frighten the other generations such that they are just unable to even come a little toward the middle?
Well, I would say this. The way that I could help millennials, parents of millennials and everything, is probably one of the key things that we as millennials need most is patience, persistence. Those are probably the two things that we need, and it's a generational thing, because yes, we are more willing to accept. We are adaptable, but that's because we came into certain situations with our own mentality, but we realized that we don't have the strategies, or we don't have the stability to implement it yet. But we have the the ambition, the guts, the courageousness to try something new. The only thing is, it just needs to be patience for it to grow. And so I think that's the same thing with any generation, with all of our, with the parents of millennials. I feel like with trying, waiting on something to grow, and patience of it, and the consistency and persistency, just continuing to stay at it, believing in whatever it is, and continuing to stay at it. That's what really bridges the gap. So they have a saying. Well, us millennials, we have a saying now called "pushing P." And that's what a lot of people, millennials, y'all know what I'm talking about. But pushing P could be, it could mean a lot of things. But let's use pushing P for patience and persistence right now. So we pushing P for all the millennials and all the parents of millennials, baby boomers, traditionalists. We pushing P. So we going to make it patient and persistent. And that's what's going to keep the generations being able to adapt to what's going on, whether it be technology, whether it be in the workplace, whether it just be the way of life, just staying with it and being able to be open-minded, like you were saying, being able to understand, but then being patient with it and seeing how it all plays out instead of just completely shunning it away. Because most times when you shun away, especially a millennial, that just gives us oil in the engine. We're going to continue to do what we thought was right anyway, and then it could either turn out good or bad. But it was because the situation wasn't given enough patience to see how it will play out. Once you see how it plays out, then a millennial and any other generation can make a more sound decision based on something. But when you shun it away, especially from us as millennials, we're so strong-headed. We're like, no, I feel like I have to try this first before anybody tells me no. And we're also very daring. So we have one of the first, obviously with technology being so heavily in our generation, we have that I'm going to give it a shot attitude. I don't need to stay with the stability. I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm going to try. And technology has opened up those doors for us. And so the patience of it, and also just being patient with technology to see how far open the door can go. I think that's going to be one of the benefits to any millennial and parents and even children of millennials.
And I wanted to make sure, and those are beautiful points, that we really mention that we're talking about two generations, baby boomers and millennials, because those are the two largest generations. But we definitely need to make sure that we acknowledge that the traditionalists are very much still in the workplace. Those are individuals that are 70 plus. They are in the workplace, and so they are impacted. Also, my generation, I'm Generation X, and we are strong in the workplace, but we're small. Compared to the other generations, our numbers are small, but we are the parents of the millennials. There are baby boomers that have millennial children, but most of the millennials are coming from Generation X. And then we have the Gen Zs, which are also children of Gen X's and grandchildren of baby boomers. They are behind the millennials. So I just want to be sure that we understand there are 5 generations in the workplace. And this technology impacts all 5 generations. But the baby boomers and the millennials are the huge dominant generations. And that's why we want to make sure that we took time to talk to Tony and Kareem, because they represent the 2 largest generations in the workplace. So as we get ready to close out, I want to ask a couple of things. One, when can we expect the book will be released?
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of discussions, and for those of you who've done books, I'm sure you guys understand how it goes. It's definitely a process. It's definitely a drawn out process, and it can have deadlines that are obtainable, but then things could also get in the way and things. And with a book, you definitely want to make sure that you compile the information that's needed for the reader. Also, with the age that we're in, we have to be very mindful of what we put in a book and how long we make the book based on the attention span. So to answer your question, we're shooting for fourth quarter this year.
Fantastic. We will be looking forward to that date, fourth quarter of this year. Now, are you all looking for sponsors from businesses, organizations, or institutions to help you launch the book?
That is, yes, to answer your question, that is the next phase. So we are looking to do a couple of things that, let's say, less traditional and more of the
there we go, millennial.
more of the embrace of technology. But yes, it's something that we've discussed. At the end of the day, a lot of my professional career was spent in branding and marketing, and the most important thing for us is how do we reach our target audience, and in this particular case, our target audience is everyone. So, yeah, we're looking at different vehicles and different platforms for the book's launch.
Okay, Sunday morning coffee talk fans. We have two authors on the stage. They need your support. We have a very important book that I would say should be required reading for everyone. If you value authors, if you value information, if you value entrepreneurship, please support these two authors and help them get their book published. If you are a business, if you are an organization, if you have an association with a business or a company, please, as an individual, please contact us at sundaymorningroast.com to help support these authors get their book published. And I have one more question before we close the show. If you could leave one jewel for our audience members to remember, what would each of you tell them? And I'll start with you, Kareem.
I would say shoot your shot. And you could shoot a 2-pointer, a 3-pointer, a layup, or a free throw. But you have to shoot. You will miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So shoot your shot, and that's with anything.
Thank you.
Be curious. Expand your platforms for where you get information, and read with a great deal of passion, because I think one of the byproducts of technology is that I think we've lost that passion for just reading, because everything is given to us in such a fast-moving fashion, and there's no need necessarily to pick up a book when it can be condensed in a 15-second summary
TikTok video
platform.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything. YouTube.
Exactly. What a beautiful point. Sunday morning, this is the power of coffee. This is how things can come together literally over a natural resource such as a coffee bean. This is why we do what we do. Coffee brings people together. It is coffee that peace treaties are made. It is coffee that negotiations are done. It is coffee that can heal relationships. We value this resource that we've decided to make a living creating greatness with and experiences with using coffee. We hope that you enjoyed this show, this guest series with our author. We thank Tony Baldwin and Kareem Mitchell for giving of themselves and making this sacrifice, because creating a book and authoring a book is a labor of love. So we thank them so much for being willing to share their innermost thoughts with us to empower the world. And we hope that you continue to follow us Sunday morning for the rest of our guest speaker series, because our next one will be Women CEOs. Please make sure that you follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We already said IG, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find all of our shows, even past shows, and you can see this show in its entirety. Sunday Morning Coffee, we are grateful for you. We thank you for making sure you support us. Please make sure you check us out on a weekly basis. And remember, always, always, always keep it Sunday morning.